Formula One tried to light up the night sky over in Singapore this past weekend. We apologize. We're going to make you wait for this a little bit, but here we go. It's our 2025 Singapore GP review show. It's season 7, episode 35. We got that right this time through. And you found the Outlap F1 podcast. You've got Andy on along with Cody tonight. Cody, sir, how was your post-Singapore GP nap? I know I had a really good one, but other than that and past that, how are you doing otherwise?
It was pretty immediate. The race ended, and I was like, all right, Max held on a second. It was kind of boring, and my wife left the house for the morning, and I was like, and gone. Other than that, it's been great. I am a little terrified by the weather forecast for what it's supposed to be like in Texas when we're going to be there.
Hot.
We're going to turn it to crisps.
Going to be hot.
But I'm still going to be there for it.
Not quite Qatar level hot, but it's going to be, we're going to not have a problem with tires degging at Coda. Let's put it that way. They're going to be melting like this. We're going to get our 2-stopper. I can all but guarantee that now because the tires are definitely going to be melting. Maybe that helps my interests out just a little bit there. We shall see. But anyway, we're going to get into all that in just a little bit. And if you found our show, as always, welcome along. We are glad you are here. You can find us on X, sometimes on Blue Sky, sometimes on Instagram, a little bit on Reddit. Don't really do that much Discord anymore, but sometimes you can find us over there. Always here on YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you're looking at or you like what you're hearing, if you're on your favorite podcasting app, you can either give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, but if you're on YouTube, you click either a like or a subscribe button if you haven't already done so. That would just help us out quite a bit to come up a little bit better in F1 related search results, which if you like content like this, we would appreciate the support. You can email the show as always, outlapf1@gmail.com. We'll get your thoughts to us. Thank you so much to the people who continue to help make the show possible. You all know the list really well by now. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Erie Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to join that vaunted list and get a shout out at the beginning of each episode from now until maybe we stop doing this, you can help promote the show. Give us a little bit of money. That would be great. You do not have to do that, but we do put our Anchor link in our show notes and our show description if you'd like to do that. What that will do is just help keep us our technology a little bit more relevant and help keep us stay current in this ever-changing landscape. All right, the particulars are out of the way. Cody, sir, you got a headline of the day here. I love it. What you got?
Mine is, my God, it's George Russell with a steel chair.
Oh, you got to do it with the Jim Ross. My God, it's George Russell with a steel chair.
I don't think I've got quite the gusto to do that, but I'll practice because we might be seeing George Russell do this once or twice more later this season. He really did seem like it came out of nowhere. We're all talking about are the McLaren's going to start beating themselves up at some point, like, actually fighting for the drivers. Is Max got a chance of actually catching up? And then George Russell rolls into this one and says, I'm going to take pole and the win. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, he was nobody looking for him. Nobody knows he's there. He's had these weekends where he's just kind of, hi, I'm here. I was George Russell and I finished 5th. No, hi, I'm George Russell and I'm just going to win the freaking race. And I'm going to dominate the qualifying at the end of the day and just go out and win the thing by, 10 seconds. So, yeah, I mean, he just, when that Mercedes car gets it right, it can totally do something like that. And everybody in front of them, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, take note because they're not that far off if they can do this here. This was not a place that I would have said is going to be a Mercedes playground. Hot, sticky, humid conditions is not what generally they get to, but they found something that worked here, and they were a little surprised by it, honestly. But we will get into all that in just a little bit. My headline of the day is, first and foremost, congratulations to my team on their second straight Constructors Championship. And now that is now out of the way, now you got to clean up this apparent freaking mess that you've made yet again out there. Although I don't think in this case you did anything wrong as a team. This was the answer that they should have done earlier. And of course, like I said before, George Russell kind of came out of nowhere, but now that's another guy you have to mark. We were commenting before we got on here. George Russell's actually not that far out of he's still mathematically not dead in this whole thing. I mean, he's on life support. There's not much left, But if he keeps doing something like this and he takes huge chunks of points out of people, you never, ever know. But anyway, we will talk about all that in just a little bit. But we shall start, as we are always apt to do, with our qualifying recap that happened bright and early Saturday morning as the sun was going down in Singapore. And it starts.
Play it.
All right, it actually starts with two drivers who get no credit for any times because they were thrown out of the qualifying session. That was both Williams drivers, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz, DSQ'd for DRS infringements, something that James Vowles was not happy about. Williams issued probably the most stern self-indicting statement I think I've ever read, where it's like, we're never going to allow this to ever happen again, and we are so sorry. But yeah, they did not participate in the qualifying, as it turns out. The classified finishers, P18 was Pierre Gasly, P17 Esteban Ocon, P16 was Franco Colapinto. Going through to Q2, but going no farther, P15 was Lance Stroll, P14 Gabby Bortoleto, P13 was Yuki Tsunoda, P12 Liam Lawson, P11 was Nico Hulkenberg, and P10 making it to Q3 was Fernando Alonso. P9 was Ali Behrman. P8 was Isaac Hadjar. Good showing for the Racing Bulls here. P7 and P6 were the two Ferraris of Leclerc in P7 and Lewis Hamilton in P6. P5, only good enough for P5, was Lando Norris, last year's winner. That was a bit of a surprise to some, and maybe to me as well. P4, pleasant surprises here. Kimi Antonelli and the Mercedes, turning up the form, apparently, to the talks that Toto Wolff has had are seeming to pay off. P3, championship leader Oscar Piastri rebounds a little bit, but it's not good enough for the front row. P2, Max Verstappen went out, and we all thought he was going to get the pole, but oh, there he came out of nowhere. George Russell in Q3 with just an absolutely mega lap. Destroys the old track record that Lando put in last year with 129.5. Actually was the only driver to improve in his second Q3 run, a 129.158 the lap time, an absolutely scaldingly quick lap. Wow. All right, Cody, big highlights here in the qualifying.
For me, the big one is just how clear of everyone else George Russell seemed in qualifying. He went out and put out the time, and it was like at that time, it was like 4/10 up on Oscar Piastri, and even when Max went faster than Oscar Piastri, he was still almost 2/10 up on that. And yeah, he was the only one who managed to really go faster on his second lap. It wasn't by much, but he really pushed it to the limit. I think he went like 7,000. So
yeah, it wasn't much, but I mean, the first lap was amazing, and the second lap, the fact that he did it again shows that was not a freak. That was not a freak thing. There was no, like, he didn't cut a corner. There were no like odd track limits things. No, that's legit.
Nah, all I could think was at the time was maybe Mercedes just decided that they're going to run their car really, really low and just hope that skid plank doesn't wear down, because it just seemed like so much faster than they normally are, and so much faster than the competition here, that I was like, they're trying something crazy here or something. Apparently, Max Verstappen was on a really good last lap, to the point where he stood a chance of maybe taking pole from George Russell. And he apparently got upset over Lando Norris potentially causing him some dirty air near the end of his last lap that he feels cost him pole position. I don't particularly think Lando did anything wrong. He wasn't really like in the way. And that just kind of happens sometimes. You know, you can't like completely remove yourself from the track. But he was pretty pissed off after qualifying. He went on to the broadcast and pretty much said, I will remember that you did this, Lando. And that is very ominous, especially coming from Max Verstappen, who will just run you clear off the track. So we'll see if anything ever comes of that. Nothing really came of it this weekend, but yeah, he's definitely feeling the pressure. He probably saw that was his chance to take a win and get some good points off of the McLarens based on where they qualified, and just missed out on it by that much.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good lap. I don't know that he had enough for Russell. It would have come down to sector 3. The first two sectors, if he was down, it was only down by, he was within the same 10th.
I think he was actually up on Russell.
Okay, he may have been up. I didn't
do those first.
I was trying to do the mental math in my head when, like, all of a sudden when it comes down to Q3, that becomes my quickie math. Like, okay, that's the best sector 1 I've seen, and now everybody else is up, and then that's the best sector 2 I've seen, and then everybody else is up on it or up or down on it. And I knew it was going to be close. Um, I watched Lando's onboard. There wasn't anything weird about it, but what happened was I think both Oscar and Lando kind of realized pole was not going to be theirs. So Lando went out super early for his Q3 run, almost pulling what sometimes like we see Fernando Alonso do, where like they have the one set of tires. Now they all eventually got back to the 2 sets of tires for Q3. So that wasn't going to be the issue. But Lando and Oscar wanted to go out first because I'm pretty sure both of them didn't want to get Baku'd. The thing that was happening was it wasn't a crazy qualifying, but there were potential for yellow flags or red flags or laps to not count. And with a minute and 29-second lap, I mean, that's a longer lap. It is one of the longer courses on the season. So they wanted to go out and put in their time, good, bad, or indifferent, and just kind of let everybody see what they could do. Only good enough for 5th for Lando. And just not feeling, certainly in qualifying trim, not feeling the car like he had for sure last year. Throughout all the practices, it just didn't seem like he was on it. Oscar did lead, I think it was FP2 at the end of Friday, but it didn't really feel like a legit FP2 because that got disrupted by a whole bunch of yellow flags and red flags. So we never saw the Ferraris put in a real flyer. We never saw Max put in his real qualifying flyer. So you couldn't really read a whole lot from Friday. But as just the qualifying was progressing, I said to myself going into Q3, I'm like, if McLaren pulls this off, they've prayed to somebody and somebody's shown down on them because I don't think they had it and they didn't. And the only question that I would have is maybe does Max get by George there? We'll never know. Unfortunately, that's one of those things because he aborted the lap. Lando was cruising back into the pit. He was on his cool down lap. He wasn't like trying to get in front of anybody. And then the one time he is close to Max, when Max is coming down that final little straight before the last turn to the main straight, he's way off the racing line. So, I mean, Max has a good point where usually in Q3 you don't expect to see that. But what Lando and McLaren did is not anything that's against the rules. You have that time. Most drivers wait until the very, very end to try to get as much track evolution as they can. They opted not to do that.
Some other impressive drives in qualifying here. We saw Kimi Antonelli have a pretty good qualifying. He's still a few tenths off of George Russell, but manages to get it up into 4th, which is fantastic.
Very impressive weekend from him this weekend, for sure.
Isaac Hadjar continuing to show very well. Oliver Behrman got the Haas all the way up into Q3. Fernando Alonso, fortunately, was looking better in practice than they did in qualifying, but still managed to qualify P10. So good on him there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Aston Martin were probably one of the darlings of Friday. Williams, I thought, were one of the darlings. I mean, we never got to see what Williams could or couldn't do, as it turned out, because they kind of got sort of kicked out. I mean, they were both, I think, eliminated in Q2 anyway. They weren't going to advance. So yeah, it was just kind of one of those things. Like we've talked about with like everybody basically P5 and below in the constructors, where depending on the track, certain cars just look better than other cars. And I think this was a case where, at least for sure early, it was going to be Aston Martin versus like the Haas's, who tend to go a little bit better in a straight line. But here you got Ali Behrman kind of bucking that trend a little bit, and actually out qualifying Fernando Alonso. So certainly fight on in those lower paying points positions. All right, so we will turn over and we shall get into the Sunday race, and we will start, as we are always have to do, with our back markers. Probably not going to spend a whole lot of time about these guys, but because it really wasn't the greatest of Singapore Grand Prix, if I'm going to be honest with you. We've kind of gone 3 for 3, where if the tires don't dig and there's only one pit stop, it's kind of hard on a track that's really hard to pass to make this a really fun one. So if your answer was, well, I was trying to watch and maybe the night's life kind of put me to sleep, I don't blame you there. It was an early wake up for not a whole ton of action, but we'll start with the back markers. And one of those teams that have sometimes shown well and didn't show well here, those were the Kick Saubers. Nico Hulkenberg gets the dreaded P20. on the day, as he was the closest thing to a safety car we had, but was not a safety car. He spun, he kept it out of the wall, he did get going again, he flat spotted his tires, that ruined his race, obviously, but there was not an intervention from that, so, and there wasn't a need to be there, but he gets P20. P19, another team that kind of really had a bad weekend, and I think they're just trying to get done with the season, man. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, that was not fun. Esteban Ocon and the Haas don't have a good showing either. Neither did Gabby Bortoletto in the Kick Sauber. Franco Colapinto in the other Alpine, only good enough for P16. P15 was Liam Lawson. P14 was Alex Albon, starting from the back. Getting up to P14 is respectable, but that's all he could do. And P13, interesting strategy for Lance Stroll. Talk about trying to hang it out. And boy, he starts on soft tires and then goes 40 some laps on them before he finally pitted. Again, this tells me, Pirelli, your compounds are too damn good. We need to get some deg into here because it's not working. But Lance Stroll does manage to come back all the way from the back to finish P13. If there was a car that was passing people, that's your guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a whole lot to talk about here in the back markers. I did get the feeling watching this race that maybe they should have tried the, C4, C5, C6 thing. I don't know why they didn't give that one a shot.
Yeah.
But they definitely didn't have enough deg to make the strategies interesting. Pretty much all the cars that we saw at the back here, I would say maybe with the exception of Alex Albon, were cars that maybe we kind of expected to see here.
Yeah.
Kick Saubers have kind of petered off. Nico Hulkenberg really hasn't had a good race since he got his podium.
Since
I think
he got the podium,
it.
that's kind of, I don't know if it's just a mental thing, like he's had, maybe he's just wanting to check out, but I don't know.
He got the one thing, the one thing that everyone was giving him shit about, that he had gone so long without a podium. He got the podium, and at that point he's like, okay, I'm good. I'm happy. I got what I wanted. The rest of the season is whatever. So yeah, maybe he hasn't done super great. Alpines are pretty much just trying to coast through the rest of the year and not draw too much negative attention to themselves, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but we still did have a couple times. I know Franco Colapinto still draws the ire in practice, where like he will, if there's a red flag, he's probably the guy kind of causing it, which is not a good look for a guy who just kind of needs to keep his nose clean for the rest of the season. But yeah, kind of. I mean, Pierre Gasly's fine. He's obviously got his contract. The Alpine brighter days are going to be ahead of them, not this season. They know that. And
only other one that I really got here is Liam Lawson did not perform nearly as well as his teammate this weekend. I'm still holding out hope.
He was the one that was causing red flags. I mean, he had himself a bad wreck, and it was FP2. I think that's one of the reasons why nobody really got a good qualifying read. In FP2, right around the middle of the session, if you're looking for your qualifying pace, that's the time to watch, from about 40 minutes on the clock to 20 minutes on the clock. That's when usually everyone shows their first blush at what qualifying pace kind of really looks like. And Liam Lawson kind of wrecked the car right in the middle of that. And it was a wreck that needed, I think, some barrier repair. And and with that being the only night session, it really kind of screwed everybody up. Sometimes that works into everybody's favor, and that leads to a better, more interesting race because nobody knows what the tires are going to do. The end result was the tires were fine. It kind of turned out, so we didn't end up having that happen. But he was the linchpin of all of that. All right, so moving into our midfield, P12, not good enough for making it into the points this weekend was Yuki Tsunoda. P11, just missing out on the points, was Isaac Hadjar. P10, recovering from the back of the grid start, was Carlos Sainz in the Williams, all the way to rally for a point, so good for him. His warm streak, I mean, he had the podium in Baku, so this was backed up by on a track that you wouldn't expect to be a good Williams track, so that was good for Sainz. P9, one of, I think, the stars of the day in the back markers, or in the lower teams here, Ali Behrman makes the qualifying form stick, good enough to come home in P9. P8, suffering a late 5-second penalty after the race because he had gone over the track limits way too many times and could not justify it, despite the fact that his brakes were gone. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. That promoted P7, Fernando Alonso, who for many people is probably the hero of the race, according to his own team radio message, as just Fernando Alonso on the team radio is just appointment television. You should just hook up and have him on one of your speakers if you can. P6 was Charles Leclerc. That was all the good Ferrari form that they could bring. P5 was Kimi Antonelli, a solid result, but probably wanted a little bit more. And then we will talk about the top 4 kind of in their own thing, because I think they are the main story of the race. So we will leave that there. But Cody, big thoughts here in the midfield finishers.
Man, Ferrari is having a rough end to the year. We had technical issues with both Ferraris. You had Charles Leclerc complaining about having to lift and coast for, I think he said, like 200 meters pretty much throughout the entire race. Was not happy with the performance of the car on that end, and it's not like there's anything you can do about it. Like you're stuck driving the car that's got that handicap on it, which is got to not be fun. Even more spectacularly was Lewis Hamilton's seemingly having his brakes fail and then maybe come back at the end, but it was crazy watching the replays after the race, and I'll get to that in just a second.
Yeah,
but watching the replays after the race of just what he was doing to try to complete the race with his brakes really not working. It was like really severely cutting, like corner after corner after corner. You could tell he was not able to slow down the car for the turns.
He's lucky he didn't get hurt. I mean, he's legit lucky he did not get hurt.
I've heard lots of complaints, including from Fernando Alonso, like, how was he allowed to race the car that way? I don't really have a good answer for that. You could have thought that, I don't know, would they even give him the meatball flag for that before?
They could have. They could have said, your car is in an unsafe condition. You have to box to either fix it or be done.
I really think that maybe is what they should have done with just how egregious his corner cutting was, because to me, that just showed plain as day, the brakes are not working.
He was behind his teammate when the problem happened, and he finishes 40 seconds with the 5 seconds. So 35 seconds is what he gave up, I think, in the last 2 laps. And he had no brakes. Like, it was smoking. The amount of soot that was coming out of both front tires looked like a diesel engine truck just spewing smoke into the air. It was just, there was no brakes. They were gone.
And I think you could certainly make the argument that he was driving the car in an unsafe manner. I guess the FIA was like, look, if you're able to make it 2 more laps, good on you. I guess if he had even like another track limits violation, they would have been increased to a 10-second penalty. So he got kind of lucky there.
Yeah, he blew through his 4, and he got his warning, and then he went through a 4th time. He only gets a 5-second penalty. And then the way that it read was there was no justifiable position that he gave for why he was so egregious with the track limits. Well, because the car was really not safe.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna give, I forget who it was, like Nico Rosberg, one of the times in Canada where like the back end of the car was literally like sitting on the top of his gearbox, and he's trying to nurse it home, and he manages to get it home. That the car is in an unsafe condition. What was going on with Lewis, I hate to tell everybody, but that was an unsafe car, man. That it should have been stopped.
Yeah, I agree. And it was really funny listening to Fernando Alonso on the radio talk about his perspective on this, because he dropped the F-bomb probably about 5 times in 5 seconds, which so many bleeps it really cracks you up. The reason I was complaining about having to watch this after the race is because the TV direction was really pissing me off during this race, because if you're watching the race live, it was pretty boring. Now, it turns out that there was actually some action that was going on, some really nice overtakes. I think it was like a double overtake at one point.
Lance Stroll actually deserved some airtime, as much as I'm not a huge fan of his, but he deserved some airtime here.
You didn't see any of it.
Yeah.
Because TV direction doesn't know what to look for. And at the end of the race, they keep doing this over and over, and I just don't get it. You got Lewis Hamilton, struggling to keep his car on the track because the brakes have failed, and it's making a show out of cutting all the corners, and Fernando Alonso losing his shit over it. And they're showing the girlfriends on the TV, and they're just there. I think the only thing we really got from the Lewis Hamilton thing was a little blurb on the side where his radio thing was, he was like, my brakes are failed. And I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. I thought he like retired. And it wasn't until after the race that I saw exactly what happened. So that was very frustrating from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a few times. I mean, we still haven't seen Oscar Piastri's winning lap from Bahrain. I don't know where that ended up in the annals of footage that shall not be aired, because that was still in the little tiny box up at the corner. Yeah, I don't know who's running I know it's not, it is like, I will defend it and I will say, look, it is probably one of the hardest jobs to make an F1 race smooth and a good operation and up to the level of standards that we want. But you should still be aware to what's going on. And the first focus should be the race, not the fan in the stands doing the either high five act or the pissed off act. Except if I'm in Coda and Lando crashes, then maybe you can cue to me and make me viral for a minute. Other than that, and I'm not wishing for that, by the way. Other than that, call or do what's on the race. I mean, that's where your focus needs to be. The stuff on the track is what's important. That's what everybody cares about, not the reaction shot of either Lando's girlfriend or Max's girlfriend or Oscar's girlfriend or anybody's mom or anybody else's thing. That can all be done in the post race on the podium. That stuff is fully appropriate, and I'm all there for it then. But while there is track action and things that are affecting points paying positions, I don't even mind if you don't show, like, if somebody in the back kind of has a moment or something at the end and it doesn't affect the points, that you should still show it. I'm still of the view you should show it, but I'm not as pissed off. But this was a points paying position. This has implications for a ton of teams and a ton of money. So let's see that on our screens.
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. So our top four, and we're going to lump them together because these were the kind of protagonists of the race. P4, even though we qualified P3, we will talk about lap one. We cannot go forward without talking about lap one. Was Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. P3 was Lando Norris in the other McLaren. P2, in what turned out to kind of be a bit of a lonely race at the end there, was Max Verstappen. And in P1, there was no challenge. George Russell took the pole, took the race win, and looked really good throughout, if I have to be honest with you. Looked every bit the part this weekend. George Russell takes the win. An hour 40, 22 seconds. We had some time left on the race clock. We'll talk about that when we get to predictions. But
yes, yeah, I definitely called that one wrong.
Yeah, all right. So let's talk about lap one. We'll talk about the start. Good. If you're a George Russell fan, you should be really, really happy because he got a mega start, was able to cut in front of Max Verstappen, and that was pretty much all she wrote going into the first turn. Max couldn't really make a move. George was pretty much free and clear. Max Verstappen got not the greatest start because he was on the not ideal part of the track. He was on the dirtier side, but still got a good enough start in order to basically hold off P2. And where the drama comes is P3 and P4. And if you've been anywhere on social media, this is apparently all anybody wants to talk about. So I've watched the Anthony Davidson frame by frame breakdown of this. I think that's, if you don't like my analysis of it, I would encourage you to go check that out on YouTube. It's on the Sky feed. He's much more experienced at it than I am, but for once in a blue moon, every now and again, Lando Norris gets a really good start, and he did. And he manages to clear Kimi Antonelli really quickly because Kimi was on the dirty side of the track and pulls up effectively right kind of behind Max. And Oscar is now on the right side, Lando's on the left side, and the sequence of corners is that it's a right and a left and a right. So, it's kind of a inside, outside, inside type deal. So for one corner, Oscar's on the inside. The next corner, he's on the outside. Same thing with Lando. Lando's on the inside one way, then he's on the outside. And what happened was, at least from what I could see, it's if there is such a thing as mutual fault, I think this is about as close as you could come because Oscar is trying to make it difficult for Lando to get past, obviously, which is what he's trying to do. And Lando is trying to take the good start that he had and try to get in the gap and get around his teammate. So they are side to side going into the corner, again, inside, outside type of deal. Lando's got more grip on the outside than Oscar did on the inside part of one corner. Lando is also trying to get onto the back of Max Verstappen, and there's a point at which Lando touches Max in the rear. and doesn't damage Max's car. And that moves Lando over into the part of the track where Oscar was trying to fill himself. And they touched on the wheelbases. And we've seen with F1 cars, there's certain parts of the car that you can touch and bang into each other, and they seem to be fine. And then there's other parts of the car where if you touch, the thing falls apart, the suspension breaks, and your day's over. This was one of the parts of the car where they touched where it was okay. Oscar gets close to the wall, but not necessarily into the wall. He's not into the wall. Both cars are out of the corner, not unscathed, but okay. They're still running. But Lando's in P3 and now Oscar's in P4, and that's basically how they finished because you can't overtake here. And that was pretty much all she wrote after that lap. So that was my unbiased call as to what I saw there, at least from the who did where and what side. Cody, what's your thought, if anything significant on this? Is this just a racing incident that's been way overblown? That's kind of where I'm at.
It's, in my opinion, it's definitely a racing incident. Lando was racing hard. He accidentally got into the back of Max Verstappen, just a little bit, but enough for him to, lose control of the car a little bit. And Oscar just happened to be out there. And it really, to me, it looks like he was just trying to regain control of the car. And he hit Oscar pretty much square on the wheels. And that was what happened. And, Lando went for it this time. To me, that's a good thing.
For all
really
the stuff that I hear
it.
about, the guy's not aggressive enough, he doesn't do this, he can't get a start right. Here it was, and he still can't win with certain people.
Yeah. But I was happy that he went for it, and I think it really was just a racing incident. What really kind of frustrated me after that was the whole drama is getting stirred up again because you got Oscar Piastri being on the radio being like, hey, he rammed me out of the way. What gives? He should give me the position back. And the team's like, oh, we'll discuss it. And then they come back a little while later and they say, yeah, we don't really see anything wrong that happened there. We're just going to let it ride out as it is, and we'll talk about it after the race. And then you got Oscar crying foul still about how, well, he did a pretty shitty job of avoiding Max if it means he's got to hit me. And I really don't think this is fair. And, we talked about how McLaren opened this can of worms by trying to keep both the drivers happy, by keeping everything fair. And you know what? In auto racing, it's not always fair. Sometimes shit happens. Sometimes your car breaks down. It's just how it goes. And Lando didn't do anything egregious. And even if he maybe did do it on purpose, I don't think it was egregious enough that we would ever know. I think that he needs to move on. And I really hope that he'll talk to the team. He'll talk to Lando. They'll watch the footage and he'll be like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But
and most of the
he was very frustrated.
Yeah. I mean, no, in the car, and from his perspective, when I watched it from the frame by frame and you just see Oscar's onboard, I get why he felt that way in the moment. I probably would have felt the same way. But, and here's where I think the team would have done a better service to him. And this is one of the things I'm kind of not upset about, but is one of the things you could have done better is the second he gets out of that race car, you've got his media person with a phone that's got F1 TV on it, and you show him lap one. Because he gets out and then he goes to the media pen, and now he's answering questions. He doesn't have all the facts. He's trying. He's still visibly upset, and the reporters are knowing what they're doing, and they're trying to goad him into a aha or an oh shit moment. And he's trying to fight it off, and he's having a hard time because he was mad because he still hadn't seen it. And he kept saying 4 or 5 times in his media pen interview, I have to look at it. I haven't seen it. Why isn't the lady in all the McLaren gear with a phone in her hand recording this going, Oscar, here, 5 seconds. Look at this. Now answer the questions. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm upset at the team about, because you could have diffused it right then and there. The other thing that's going on about here is this F1 TV footage with all of the supposed social media investigative reporters that think they know and they don't know. Because I've watched F1 TV onboard since they've started. There is a universal thing that all of F1 TV does with all 20 cars at the same time. They kick the onboards and the radios on in the same moment, and they kick the onboards and the radios off at the same moment. If Oscar Piastri was pissed off enough to the point where what he was accused of doing was unplugging the radio, even if he did that, you still would have heard the rest of Zach's message on F1 TV, because I've watched many times on the onboard where the McLaren, the visual feed goes out, and you even just see like the McLaren logo, which would indicate you don't hear anything. But I've still heard team radio coming through because the team radio on F1 TV, it's 2 separate feeds, is still on. I've also heard it the other way where the radios go out, but I hear the engine. I've even contacted F1 TV several times to say, I hear the engine, I don't hear the radio, what gives? And sometimes I've helped you fix it. You're all welcome, however many people watch on F1 TV. That all having been said, it is a universal, it is a FOM thing. It is not a team thing. Oscar couldn't have done it even if he wanted to do it. It was one of the stupidest things I've seen all weekend. It just made me absolutely insane. He was legitimately upset, and I got it. But somebody from that team should have been there to say, this is what happened on lap 1. And then he probably goes, oh, well, not as bad as I had it in my head. Give me 5 minutes and let him go talk to the media. Good Lord.
I think he will have cooled off in time for the next race. Much to everyone's dismay, who wants to see them like really go at it, like a la Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. But it's probably not going to happen just yet.
It still might. I mean, there's enough of a, like, if something worse happens, but we'll have to deal with it then.
It might get worse as time goes on.
That's
like,
true.
It's
that's actually one of the things I'm hoping that they do, is give them the freedom to, if they're going to go do this, and when we get to awards, well, I'll talk about it some more then. But I've got like 3 points of what I want to see the team do now that they have clinched the constructors. That part is done. We'll get there. Hang
on. On the other side of that, with our front two, as you said, George Russell took the lead off the line, got a much better start than Max Verstappen, and held the lead. Now, I will say that at least from my perspective, it did seem like there was a chance later in the race. There was a stage of the race where Max was actually making some pretty significant gains on George Russell after the pit stop sequence. However, they both then got into lap traffic, and
that was the thing.
At that point, that made it much more difficult for the Max to make any gains on George Russell. I don't know if he would have really been able to do anything if he got there anyway, because it did seem so
nobody
hard
could overtake. Nobody could overtake.
It seemed like Lando had pace advantage on Max, and he couldn't get it done either. So,
I mean, you've got I'm watching it on the timing. I mean, and I'm sitting there going, you've got 4 effing DRS zones, and it doesn't matter. It literally does that. There are not enough good corners to where, even if you have the DRS advantage, where it works for you. And the only thing that could have happened was Max having a moment. Now, there were 2 that I thought were at least interesting. One was Max almost pulled the same move Lando did last year going into that, turn 13?
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
he had a big lockup, and all of a sudden I watched the timing. It went from like 4 seconds to 2.5, and I went, okay, Max had a thing. I don't know what happened, but Max definitely had a thing, and then they finally showed it. And then the other one was going into, I think it was turn 17 or something like that. Lando got alongside, but he was on the outside. There was no path to make that move work, even if he gets there, because all Max is going to do is just shove him off because he's got the inside. And we all know in F1, the guy on the inside has all of the rights to the corner, which would have been the correct call. And if I was Max, I would have done the same damn thing. I would have booted Lando to the outside and made him stop and reset, which is almost what effectively happened. But that was about as close as Lando got, despite the fact he was in DRS for a good amount of time. But yeah, I thought Max's race probably got the most he could out of it, I think, given where he started.
Yeah. The only thing he could have done better was win the race, and it seemed like that was never really going to be on because George was handling it so well. He does make gains, however small they are, on the McLaren drivers, which going into this weekend, I think both of us were like, this is where the dream is going to end. And the fact that he came out ahead of both of them, even though he didn't win, he only gained 3 points on Lando and he only gained 6 on Oscar, but that's realistically more than I was expecting. Look, I mean, I think the Red Bull car as a whole did a lot better than either of us, certainly myself. I mean, I kept saying like this was going to be the test. And basically at the end of the first practice, I'm like, he's not nowhere. And if he's not nowhere, that means he's in the game, because if Max is anywhere, he's in the game, because it's just how good he is. When we get to awards, I'm going to have some speech to McLaren Nation as to how we're going to try to get through these next 6 races and not kill ourselves or tear each other apart. And one of those is understanding that there's going to be some places. Las Vegas is my number 1 right now, where probably Max is
going to be the favorite to win. Let's just be realistic in that. Because if it ain't the Ferraris, it might either be what we saw here, which is George Russell being in contention for sure, or Max
they were
Verstappen.
well and away the best last year in Las Vegas.
And that was a track that the McLarens, since they built it, haven't figured out. So there are going to be places where I think the McLaren form will come back a bit. I don't know about the next one as much as I would love to be all rah-rah and thinking Coda's the place to get right. That's another place they haven't gone well historically and recently, and even in this latest iteration, even though they've had some good moments, like Endo took the pole a couple years ago. But, it may matter, it may not matter, but we'll see. The good news about Coda, then here, you're going to be able to overtake a Coda. So if somebody's got more race pace, you're probably going to be able to see that play out. And because it's going to be hot as frick, we're going to see some tire dag and probably a two-stop race, no matter what tire they bring, because that thing's had a whole year out in the hot sun to get cured up. All of the new tarmac and stuff should now be rubbered in enough. They just had a 6-hour WEC race about a month ago that in the middle of a hurricane that deluged and washed that track off more than you could ever want. So it's going to be an interesting thing. There's going to be lots to play for in a couple weeks when we are there. So it is going to be a thing for sure. But yeah, George Russell, congrats on the win. Doing everything he needed to do. They nailed the pit stop. They nailed the strategy. The only thing I was just curious about, what did you think about Max starting on the soft tire? Because he obviously didn't get it on lap 1. Were you a little worried somewhere in the middle that maybe that was going to bite him? He obviously got enough tire life when he switched, because once he switched, he was fine.
I was a little bit worried because it did kind of seem like a little bit of a Hail Mary going on the softs. I got to imagine that he went on the softs hoping that it was going to get him a better start on the dirty line, and then he might be able to send it up the inside of George Russell and get the lead. And at that point, you got the clean air. You can make those tires last a lot longer. But when he didn't get it, and he was, one of the few front runners there that was on softs, I was a little bit worried, especially since he did have to pit a little bit earlier than the other drivers. But realistically, he really didn't pit that much sooner than like the McLarens, and ended up making it work. There really wasn't that big of a difference in tire life on them.
No, I think he only lost like 7 laps, and in the end, it really didn't matter.
Yeah, once they got out of the pit sequence and he was still ahead, I was like, all right, it's probably fine. Nobody is passing here. So yeah, I wasn't worried about it, except for maybe from like lap 2 to lap 10. That was about the only time I was worried, because I was like, shit, he didn't get the lead. Now what?
Right.
But it all worked out in the end.
Yeah. Good weekend I think a solid weekend for Max, a good weekend, obviously a great weekend for George Russell, and congrats on the win there. All right. Well, that kind of concludes our recap of the race. We will take a quick break. We will do our re-rack act. We will come back and we will tell you what this did to those drivers' standings. It does get a little bit closer all the way around, that's for sure. And then we will tell you about the constructor standings. One team has, obviously, we talked about it before, McLaren has secured the constructors, but there's still a whole lot to play for up and down this constructors grid as well. We will fill you in on all that. Then we will open it up to your takes on the weekend in the fan email segment. We will hand out some awards. I will give a bit of a stump speech in my rubbish award, as I sometimes am apt to do. I promise I will not get too red-faced. At least I hope not. We'll find out how intense I get, because I'm buried on this as I've kind of prepped for it. But then we'll talk about predictions. We'll talk about predictions in a little bit. Put it this way, both of us were not looking well after qualifying. When I had Lando on the pole, that clearly didn't happen. You had Max on the pole, that didn't happen. So who came out a little bit better on Sunday? We will find out. And then we will start to set the stage, because next week at this time, I will be in my sister's basement, sleeping, hopefully, getting ready for our early flight to go down to Texas. And then next week, Wednesday, we will be down there in Texas, hopefully settled into our hotel and getting ready to see what is going to be seen at Circuit of the Americas for the weekend. So we will set that stage. So come on back. You will not want to miss it. All right, welcome back on in. This is season 7, episode number 35 of the Outlap F1 podcast, our 2025 Singapore Grand Prix review show. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up talking about a potentially championship significant Singapore GP, but otherwise kind of a bit of a snooze fest, at least in terms of overtaking. But anyway, we'll leave that there. But what did this do to all of the points? Cody, if you take the drivers, I will handle the teams per normal. What you got?
All right, Oscar Piastri still holds on to the Drivers' Championship lead for McLaren at 336 points now. Lando Norris has eaten into his lead just a tiny bit this weekend. Lando's in second, and the other McLaren at 314 points. So still, what is that, 22 points
22.
out? Verstappen also makes very small gains in the McLaren's lead over him. He's down at 273 points, so still very unlikely, but still not impossible, especially after what we saw this weekend. Just keep my hopes up. George Russell actually made decent gains on Max, 7 points on him. George Russell sitting in 4th place with Mercedes at 237 points. Charles Leclerc in 5th place and Lewis Hamilton in 6th place, both for Ferrari, both having pretty rough weekend here in Singapore, both of them having car troubles that hampered their points tallies. But they're up to 173 points for Leclerc and 125 points for Hamilton. Kimi Antonelli had himself a decent comeback weekend, I would say, here in Singapore. Good qualifying, decent result. He's in 7th place, and the other Mercedes at 88 points. Alex Albon, unfortunately not able to get any points this time out following his needing to start from the pit lane, but he's still in 8th place in the points for Williams at 70 points. And then it's a pretty good gap back down to 9th place. Isaac Hadjar having himself a great rookie year. 9th place in the points for Racing Bulls at 39 points. And just 2 points behind him is Nico Hulkenberg, holding on to that 10th place spot for Kick Sauber at 37 points.
And just for some perspective, we normally don't go down this far, but from P11 to P14, in the drivers is 7 points. So there are a horde of drivers looking for that 10th spot. Alonso is 11th with 36, so that's 1 point behind, and he's looked better a lot more recently. Sainz, based on that podium that he got in Baku, was up to 32, tied with Stroll, who's also on 32. And Liam Lawson is in P14, only 7 points away from P10 with 30 points. So that P10 spot, we talk about, it's going to be shifting around. By the end of this season, who knows who's going to have it? Because there's a whole lot that's going to change between now and then. All right, turning to the constructors. As I mentioned before on the headline, McLaren Mercedes. Yeah, boys, we got there. A little bit ugly, but we got there. But good enough.
It wasn't that ugly. It's only been ugly for the last 2 races.
I know, but I don't know. I just felt a huge relief that this weekend was over because I kept thinking, keep it out of the wall. I was just haunting of watching Oscar Piastri's crash in my head of just the tires going in 2 different directions as he hits the Tech Pro. Luckily, that image never happened. So good there. But they have secured the Constructors' Championship. 650 points. So they still got a long way to go, and they still could maybe potentially still set the record for the most points ever by an F1 team. We shall see. Looks a little bit harder after this weekend, if I'm being honest about it. A P2 is Mercedes. They check in with 325 points. P3 is Ferrari, up to 298. P4, back in the mix. They could definitely catch the Ferraris now. Max Verstappen with 290 points, with some help occasionally from Yuki Tsunoda. P5 is Williams. They are up to 102. Good for them. They have some distance on P6 Racing Bulls, who check in with 72. And then here's the fight for all the rest. P7 Aston Martin, only 4 points adrift with 68 points. Little bit of a gap now to Kick Sauber, who check in now with 55 points. Haas check in, thanks to Ali Behrman. They are up to 46 points. At Alpine, they're still going to be the best, worst team ever, but they're still the bottom of this table. They remain on 20 points. All right. So, yeah, lots to play for in the drivers for sure. Lots to play for in the constructors all the way around. This is not a closed off season where we can just throw it to the wind for any stretch of the imagination. All right. So you have heard our takes on the Singapore Grand Prix weekend. It's now time for our favorite segment, Fan Email segment, where we open it up and get your takes on the Singapore GP weekend. Rachel Fleming is here. We've got Mr. Formula here. Cody, it's your time to shine. What do we got?
First one comes in from Rachel Fleming. Thank you, Rachel. And she says, I needed a Russell win this weekend. I was having a miserable weekend with all my favorite British football teams all losing. Rachel, I feel your pain. My favorite baseball team is also losing. So it's been a rough couple days for me too.
Been a tough road. My favorite hockey team just started the season with a loss. The baseball team had some moments, but they're in trouble. And maybe our American football team, we don't know if they're any good or not. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not.
They may not be.
Anyway, Rachel then goes on to say, come on, Toto, get that contract out.
No kidding.
Russell still has yet to put pen to paper officially for his future Mercedes contracts. We all know what's coming. We just don't know for how long. But anyway, she says, as for the race, well, let's be honest, it wasn't the best race. No safety cars, which was a very big surprise for this race. The gloves are off at McLaren now. Now that the constructors is sorted. Personally, I don't think Piastri should have any complaints, but he had plenty of them on the radio, as we discussed. And Norris had a great start, but just couldn't get past Max. Sauber watch, Hulk's poor run of form continues, and he was the only driver to make a big error during the race. I'm sure we all held our breaths when we saw him go off, but he did continue and got past the Alpine. Yes, I am using that name for them.
It's appropriate.
Gasly. Yep, it is appropriate. They've been sitting there on 20 points for seemingly forever, it feels like. Gabriel did okay, but, the Saubers just weren't getting any points today. And finally, Alonso watched the hero of the race, in his own words, brilliant radio, and fought back with everything Aston Martin threw at him to score points. By the way, have a great time in Coda. Thanks very much. I am sure we will. We just might be really dehydrated and sunburnt by the time we get back. But
I was going to say, we're going to be the most hydrated two people sitting out there trying not to shrivel.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be fun though. Like I've loved it every time we've gone, and this year has a really good championship fight, which was not the case when I went with the last time with you, and I was just basking in the glory of Max winning everything. At least this time there's some stakes.
Oh yeah,
but it's going to be a good one. Yeah, some of the stuff you got here. It is a little bit of a weird one that there wasn't any safety cars, especially since if you have a crash here, it's on the track. So you almost
had
guaranteed.
Rain at 45 minutes before the race started. So you usually, but it's so warm there that it burnt all the way off before the race started.
Yeah, it was looking pretty dry by the time they actually got going. Yeah, even with Nico Hülkenberg having his minor incident, it was not enough for a safety car. I think actually, I forget how many times it's happened now at this point, but actually all 20 cars finished this race, which
for
historically has not happened a whole lot, but it has happened a lot in the last few years.
I don't think it's ever happened here.
No, maybe not here, but I was reading the statistic about how it's only happened, I forget, maybe like, I might have the stat messed up, but like 10 times over the course of history, and like 4 of them or 5 of them have been in the last 3 seasons. So these cars are rock solid, reliable, and the drivers are all very good. So that's why we're seeing everyone finish.
And the tires don't deg. So
yeah, tires don't deg. I really hope the gloves come off now that the Constructor Championship is taken care of. So how do you feel about this? Let's say that the gap between Piastri and Lando doesn't decrease by a whole lot or change by a whole lot, and somehow Max starts to actually catch up. Maybe we've got some kind of retirement that happens. You think McLaren start pulling out team orders to just give it to Oscar, or do you think they just let him run it to the end, and no matter what happens with Max,
if it's
still a long ways off?
Yeah, I mean the only way I think they pull out like a legitimate team order is if it's more than 25 points going in the last race of the season. If like Lando slips behind that 25-point barrier and he's like mathematically out of it, and somehow Max gets to like 22 points behind or something like that, there will be a team order. Oscar will get the preferred strategy, and that'll be the end of it. That I think will be the only time where they're going to do it. I was going to get to, and I can talk a little bit to it now, but the thing that I want McLaren to do different more than anything else, and they did it even in this race, and it kind of bugged me here. Stop caring about who's behind you. Seriously, stop caring about who's behind you. There was no threat from Charles Leclerc anywhere in that race. They botched the Piastri pit stop. It was a 5.5-second pit stop, and he still came out 7 seconds in front of Leclerc. Why, in that moment, you decided to twist your entire strategy? Your entire strategy was built on the fact that Max started on the soft tire, and you were going to try to overcut him, which was the right move. The undercut thing, and the other thing I wanted to stop with the fake radio about pit stops. Nobody's buying it.
Yeah,
Nobody's
that one
buying
was
it.
so cheesy.
Oh my God, I didn't buy it. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? It was literally my reaction to it, because just knock that shit off. But anyway, the whole point, the only way you were really going to win was if you overcut and used your better tire deg against Max, and you couldn't do it because you thought, again, this is the whole thing that started Hungary 2024. The whole mess was started by somebody trying to cover off the guy behind. That wasn't ever going to be a threat. It should only be about focusing forward. And it should be for both drivers to only care about getting the most amount of points that they can in each race. Anyway, we'll get more into it in a little bit. That was a preview of what's coming.
Yep. So hopefully the gloves are off. And lastly, Alonso did have himself a really good race, got him to the points, and gave us some really good entertainment over the radio with his feelings on his old teammate Lewis Hamilton from so many
And
years
he was right.
ago.
I mean, that car really should have been pulled over. Race control has to understand, and they are guilty of this, and the TV direction is guilty of this. And I understand everyone wants to be around that top four in the championship battle and all that other stuff. And there was plenty of airtime for that, and there should have been plenty of airtime because Lando was right on Max's gearbox for a good amount of time. I understand why a lot of that, but there is still other things going on the track. There are 18 other drivers or 17 other drivers or 16 other drivers that should not have significant amounts. Like when they are having moments, we should see that. And you're doing, again, the casual fan, which you're trying to keep, which you've gotten in some instances, and you're trying to hold on to them. You're going to make them annoyed if we're watching fan reaction or girlfriend reaction when we should be watching what's actually happening on the track. That's your first and foremost thing.
Thank you, Rachel, for your email. Our next one comes in from the Formula. Thank you, Mr. Formula. He says, these race highlights are now resorted to battling Alpines and Racing Bulls. He's 100% done at the Red Bull program. We're getting some pretty scathing remarks here. I understand that car can be difficult to drive, but damn it, we know it can go fast. He isn't good enough to figure it out. Harsh, but true. Also, did you see Lewis's brake issues in the last few laps? Holy cow, was it bad? Zero TV coverage of it. Yes, we know.
Maybe if the car was actually on fire, maybe that like if there was orange coming out, maybe then we would have seen it. Maybe.
I legitimately had to go to Reddit to see that happen. Like, I did not even realize it happened during the race.
I mean, and Reddit's probably pulling what, the closed circuit from around the track to show you what's going on. Like, if it's not an onboard, that's the only way you're going to see it. So, unreal.
Yes, as far as your comments about Yuki, I'm in agreement. I cannot help but wonder how the makeup of this championship might be slightly different if Yuki Tsunoda was doing well enough to, it doesn't even have to be finishing like at the front. He just needs to be there, to be in the mix, to do something to contribute to the team dynamics, to be able to, hold up the McLarens here and there every once in a while. And, he kind of did that in Azerbaijan. And I was like, holy shit, like he's actually having a pretty good race. He's holding up Lando a little bit. Like, if Max is going to have any like legitimate shot at the championship, they're going to need something like that. They're going to need some miracles for sure, like a Piastri retirement or something. But him being in the mix would go a long way to help him close up that points gap. And he's just not there. It's hard to put too much fault on him for it because everyone else who's passed through that car has had issues. Sergio Perez had problems, especially later on in his tenure there.
We're still on our Lawson. Sergio Perez apology tour.
Yes, we are. We are sorry.
After Coda going to Mexico, where the entire media pen should just all look at the Mexican fans and say, we're sorry. He'll be back next year.
It wasn't all his fault. We understand now. Yes, he had trouble coming to grips with the car. Liam Lawson clearly had trouble coming to grip with the car. But I don't know, like Yuki Tsunoda has been in the sport for a long time now. And, Checo was really good and had been in the sport that much longer, but feel like Yuki has been in the sport long enough that he should be able to figure out something with the car. Liam Lawson got the benefit of the doubt for me because he's still pretty new to the sport. It's just, I don't see him really continuing in Formula One after this because you're going into new regulations, new car. Hopefully it'll be easier to drive. But at this point, does Red Bull even want to continue to give him that chance? They've got Isaac Hadjar waiting in the wings, who is having a hell of a rookie season. Liam Lawson has been kind of, hit and miss, but he's still really green. They might be worth it to give him another season or two to see if, he can improve in the new cars. And they've got Arvid Lindblad in the junior series, who they've been touting pretty heavily and want to bring up.
I've heard them
Running
call
out
the
of
mini.
seats.
I've already heard them call Arvid Lindblad Mini Max because he's got the same kind of attitude like Max does. Just wants to get in the car and go racing. Doesn't matter what.
Now that would be fun. Two Maxes on the same team, please.
Oof.
I'm here for it. But
we'll see.
if it's going to get to that point, I don't see Yuki Tsunoda fitting into the picture anymore. I think they're going to look at his performance this season. They're going to say, sorry, you're toast. This one's going to go to, although we've seen so far, it's probably going to go to Hadjar.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing about what Yuki has done to say Yuki has not had enough moments other than the flash in the pad that was Baku, which Sergio Perez had the flash in the pad that was Baku last year. And we all thought that too. Like, could this be the beginning of something? And then it turned out not to be. And unless Yuki Tsunoda comes out in the next 6 races and does something to turn ahead, I think it's game over. And the other thing that's against him, he doesn't have the Honda partnership with Red Bull anymore to make him appealing. There's no more money coming from Honda. It's going to be Red Bull Ford branding next year. Whether that was a good decision by Christian Horner or not, we're going to find out, but that's where we are. And yeah, I don't see Yuki having a seat. I also think next year is going to be a house of pain, I think, for Red Bull, unfortunately, because here's why I'm going to say that. They are the only team still bringing parts to their 2025 car. They brought a brand new front wing and a huge floor upgrade later than anybody else. It has gotten that car right. I give them full credit, but you only do that at the expense of your 2026 program. And to me, that also tells me they know their 2026 program is probably not going to be good.
Yeah, that goes back to something I said much earlier in the
beginning of the season. And you're getting exactly what you wanted them to do.
I thought for sure that they were going to throw everything at this season's car to get one last driver's championship before everything gets topsy-turvy with the new regs. And I think it really could have worked. It's just that they couldn't get the car to work soon enough is the problem. Is if they had gotten the car to where it is now, maybe even like three races sooner, I think we would much more seriously be talking about Max's position in the championship.
You put that back in the European season and it's, go back before the summer break. Like if he's anywhere in Hungary, it's a different ball game. If he's anywhere, I mean, he was there with Great Britain for a while, but that wasn't a great result. What the killer is the DNF in Austria and the flash minute that he had in Spain. Those are going to be the things that if Max doesn't get there, that they're going to look back on and say these were the moments where it could have maybe changed.
Yeah. So it is seemingly too little too late. It's not over yet, but unfortunately they're going to put their eggs in this season's basket. They're not going to have the championship to show for it. And they're probably going to suffer for it next year, which, then I'm going to have to understand what all the Ferrari fans have gone through the last several seasons.
Now, the good news is like, it may just be 1 year. Like, I think that's why, we're not getting the Max Verstappen leaving Red Bull talk anymore, because I think what they've all kind of said is 26s are going to be our rebuilding year. You have teams in American sport talk about that all the time. Well, we're just going to have a rebuilding year. Now, the trick is when you actually stop calling it a rebuild and actually start to contend again. Some teams know how to do it better than others. Anyway, we've sometimes had the moniker of there's been teams in this town that have been rebuilding for 7 years or since people with number 23 on them have retired and they haven't gotten it right in 20 years since then. Anyway, I can throw all that out. That's a different podcast, different show, different time. Maybe me and Dan will get together and try to revive that whole thing, but that's a whole different issue. With Formula One, I do think what they're going to have is they're going to have a bit of a rebuilding year where they're just going to put that car, they're going to test it out. They're going to Max give us whatever feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. And we're going to listen to you because Lauren McKee's one of the things that he's done that I think has been great for Max and great for Red Bull is they're listening to their drivers. When they did that development thing that took them in the wrong direction, they stopped listening to the feedback. Like Max would tell me, I would tell him, I can't turn the car. And they're like, well, you should be able to turn the car. Well,
you should be able to turn the car. You're still going really fast. So it can't be that bad.
Like they were chasing some, like the reports I was getting was they were chasing in the simulator. Like the simulator kept saying that they should be going better. and that the car was optimized for where it should have been to work in all sorts of tracks, and it just wasn't. And Max was trying to tell him that, and he wasn't getting listened to. That's why he was so frustrated. When you're as good as Max Verstappen is, he can tell you whether or not the car is right or the car isn't. And even now that the car is better, like sometimes you still hear him on the radio, even in this race, saying, the car won't turn or the downshifts suck or whatever it is. But the difference between now and then, they're listening to him and they're trying to make adjustments for him. All right. Well, thank you everyone for contributing to our fan email segment. I always enjoy getting riled up in the fan email segment. That's always fun. But now we will turn to our awards. I'm trying to get too much more riled up, I promise. Here, we'll start with the rubbish. Cody, I'll let you go first. What you got here?
All right. My rubbish award is going to go to the TV direction. Really wasn't a whole lot of on-track rubbish this weekend to speak of, in my opinion. So I was going to give it to the TV direction. I think I've probably given it to it before. But yeah, I like auto racing. I want to watch auto racing. And yeah, it's cool that, there's fans at the track that are enjoying the race, and there's people in the paddock that are enjoying watching their, loved ones win and all that stuff. But I want to enjoy the race from my couch. And I do that by seeing the race on my TV. So I felt like I wasn't seeing enough of the good parts of the race on my TV this weekend. That's why it's rubbish.
And I will add to this. Here's another one, and I didn't even think about it until now. On your onboards, F1 TV, will you please stop? Like, I get, sometimes you have to sync the onboard up because you're going to show this view during the race. There's 2 onboards that can go away, and I don't ever want to see again because they tell me nothing. The one where it's looking at the driver from the steering wheel tells me nothing about what is going on with that car. And when you stick with that for 3/4 to almost 2 or 3 laps, like I get if you're going to come to that shot because you want to show that shot on the main feed, fine. I don't have a problem with that. But once that shot's gone, get off of that shot, please, because you're telling me nothing about what's going on with my driver at that point. The other one is the wheel well shot. They had Lando's car hooked up to the wheel well shot for 10 laps this race. That also tells me nothing about what's going on. The only useful shot is the one on top of the halo. That's the useful, or the one where, you're at the driver's shoulder. That's interesting because I can see the steering wheel and I can read the telemetry and all that other good kind of stuff. And I can match up the radio and I can kind of understand what's going on. But those 2 shots, yeah, that's not even TV direction. That's just an onboard direction. Knock that crap off. So that can go in the bin. Other thing we got to talk about, McLaren Nation. My God, we got to have a talk about how we do this, folks, because, it's hard enough to be on social media when it's fans of other teams that are dragging us through the mud. And look, I've suffered through 2015 where we deserved to get drugged through the mud, and 2017 where we deserved to get drugged through the mud, where we said we had the best chassis and the Honda engine was all the problem, but we couldn't finish more than 29 points in a season. Those were years we deserved. Every bit the thing we got, I'll own all of that. Now that the tide has finally turned, and I don't know if this is just the newer part of the fandom, but you got to take a minute and enjoy this part of it. I keep saying I'm riding the roller coaster. Good, bad, or indifferent, because you have to enjoy this, because this is what you want if you're a follower of this team. You want your drivers in contention for the drivers. So stop tearing your team apart when you're trying to say that there's this mass conspiracy for either driver. There isn't. This team is twisting themselves up and out and through themselves, trying to tell you that there isn't. And there's not. So that's 1. 2, we've already talked about this, but as a team, for the love of God, please stop caring about who the hell is behind you. It is focus forward. If it's not P1 or it's not P2, you better try to be getting the best in your strategies. And I don't care if for the rest of the season if we have split strategies. One guy starts on a medium, one guy starts on a hard. That's totally fine. If one guy wants to throw a spanner and put a soft tire on to start the race to get a better start, good on you. I don't want to see that unless the drivers have said that they're on board with it. That's the thing that you can do to actually take the gloves off of this thing. And 3, last time I'm going to say this, I hope, fix the goddamn pit stops. Lando's stop was fine. Oscar's stop was not. I don't understand it. This is the 3rd weekend in a row where we've had more than 5-second pit stops. Oscar came back, but it was way too little too late. He was never going to have a chance at that. So fix the damn stops. I know you guys drill on this. I watch you during the course of a weekend. Dakota, we're going to watch them do 80,000 practice pit stops. Just get it right on race day and you're going to be fine, and everyone else will calm their asses down. And then finally, to McLaren Nation, because let's be honest about where this car's at. It's not a perfect car anymore. The other teams have come up. Red Bull has developed. Mercedes have done some developments, and they've gotten their cars right. And there's going to be certain tracks where we got to just be okay with winning ugly. And that means if third or fourth is all we're going to be able to get the third and the fourth, keep the advantage that you got, and lean on this puppy all the way home. Don't be pissed if it's not 1-2 all the way. I'm not going to do that. It's about aggregate points. It's a math game now. The one good thing that came out of this race, in my opinion, was Max didn't win, because if Max won, it's 7 more points, and now it's starting to really snowball. Would have been, 3 or 4 in a row?
It would have been 3 in a row, and we would have all been like, holy shit, where was this?
And I would have been, and I know even next time out, as much as I want to say, well, Coda's where they're going to get right, I don't think they're going to get right there. It's probably not going to look really good for them until Brazil. Mexico, they've never gone well with Mexico, but we'll see what happens there. But if that's the best you're going to do, get what you can and lean on your advantage. That's why you have it. So we all got to get used to kind of how we rewatch, because everybody seems to just want to be the dominant car. So do I. Of course I want that as a fan, but it might not happen. So let's all take a deep breath. Enjoy this Constructors Championship. They don't come around a whole lot for this team. It's 2 in 20 years, and it may be a long time because we don't know what next year's rules are going to be. So enjoy this. Whew. All right. Enough of that. We'll go into our analysis paralysis. I've already kind of talked about this one, but yeah, the F1 TV direction as a whole just confuses me. I think I already just kind of talked about it, so I'm just going to pile on there. Cody, what you got?
Is that McLaren needs to stop asking their drivers if they're okay with pitting in a particular. We've heard them do it so many times. Hey, Lando, we're kind of wondering if maybe Oscar can pit first because we're trying to, and this goes to you talking about that they were too worried about who is behind them. But to me, it just seems ridiculous at this point to be asking your drivers how they want to, the order that they want to pit in, or if they can do that, because they're racing against each other now. You've already sealed the constructors, and they're more than likely the only 2 contenders. They don't give a shit anymore. They're going to say whatever makes them come out on top. And we even heard Lando kind of say that this, because at first he was like, yeah, wait, no. So
I don't think he heard quite what he thought he heard, and then he realized halfway through what he was saying.
It's probably like in the middle of a turn. It was like, yeah, whatever. And then thought about it when he got out of the turn. It was like, hell no. To me, it just doesn't make sense to be asking your drivers if they're okay with doing something like that. If you're really that worried about it, just do the strategy. Take a page out of Nike's book and just do it. And, if they complain about, hey, why did you do it this way? Then you can explain about it later. But they're going to pit when you tell them to, most likely, and you can just take care of it that way. That's pretty much what all the other teams seem to do. So yeah. I don't know why it does kind of seem like almost taking like the fairness thing to the extreme. It's like, we want to cover off the back driver, but we want to just make sure that's okay with you, Lando.
Well, and like I said before, don't even give a crap about that. But again, it should only be about what's going to get. Oscar's strategy at this point should be his side of the garage coming up with what he wants to do to try to get as forward as he can from wherever he qualifies. Same thing for Lando's side. And like I said, if that means that they start on different tires, to me, that's okay. If they have different run plans, to me, that's okay. If we're saying they're free to race, the strategy to me is part of this. I'm okay with the rule of, hey, let's try not to hit each other, and that's cool. But other than that, let them go. I mean, let's see what they can actually do, because it may take at some of these tracks where it doesn't, air quote to quote Stella, suit the car. You may have to do a home run strategy at Coda where you hang out on a set. Maybe you start on a hard tire and you go as far as you can and maybe try to bridge that gap to a one stop, because your tire deg is your strength. That's how you would win a Coda race. Now, what are they probably going to do? They're going to start both guys on the medium. They're going to run to lap 16. They're going to switch to a set of hards. They're going to run to lap 34, and then they're going to switch to another set of hards. But if Lando can win because he can make his tires work, as we saw in Hungary, he should have that opportunity. Same thing for Oscar. Same thing. And if they both do it and they both hang it out, good on them for that too. Anyway, all right, we'll move on to our dark horse of the day. I'm going to give this one to the hero of the race, Fernando Alonso, for at least making it entertaining, and I love the team radio. on his side. I love sarcastic Fernando. It's just too good. And he's so experienced. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he backed it up, too. He got his ass in the points. Good going, Fernando. I love it. Cody, what you got?
My dark horse is going to be George Russell. We didn't think they were going to be a factor. They didn't think they were going to be a factor. And yet here they are with the pole and the win. I think Russell pretty much came out of nowhere with a steel chair. So
yeah. So I'll back that up with my driver of the day. I'm going to give that to George Russell. Hi, how you doing? My name is George. I race Formula One cars, and I just whipped your ass this weekend because that's what he did. Well done, sir. And yeah, get the contract out. I mean, it's interesting. I have I'm done trying to predict when this is going to happen because I keep saying it's going to happen and it never does. But U.S. Grand Prix seems to be one of those places where a lot of announcements tend to happen late in the season. Now would be a good time as any, Toto. Let's put the pen to the paper and get it done because I don't want him going somewhere else if I'm Mercedes. If I'm a Mercedes fan right now.
I feel like you've made that comment several times. Oh, British Grand Prix seems like a place where they would make this announcement. Oh, the summer break seems like the perfect time to make this announcement. Oh, U.S. Grand Prix, they always make this kind of announcement. So
well, we're going to get announcements. Like here's what I do think. Two things I am looking out for. One, Coda's contract is up at the end of next year. They need a renewal. From all things that I've heard and read on, it sounds like it's on track, and maybe they're just waiting for that weekend to do it. That would make sense. Because, dear God, you shouldn't go away. Of all the U.S. tracks, do not go away from Circuit of the Americas. I mean,
no, it is. As far as the racing goes, it is the best track.
Yeah. Two, I'm wondering if they're waiting until they're here to do the U.S. rights deal because we still don't have it. We think it's going to be Apple TV. It would make sense with all the technology and Apple having a huge presence in Austin to announce it then and there. Something we'll look out for. I mean, we may be talking about this next week and what the implications are for U.S. fans. Those are my two things I'm watching for. But yeah, anytime Toto wants to put pen to paper and sign George Russell, feel free because I'm really tired of trying to predict it. Cody, what you got for driver of the day?
My driver of the day is also George Russell. I don't think you can really argue too hard against that. He got the pole. He led pretty much the whole race. I think he did lead the whole race.
Yep.
Came out with the win. He still looked really sweaty and tired after that race. So I got to really hand it to him. He even tried out that cooling vest that they have now, and he still looked like he'd been through hell. But at least he got a win out of it this time. So even though he looked sweaty and shrunken, he had a big smile on his face.
Well,
and
the cooling vest was actually an FIA thing. They declared that even before the Friday, where they said you are commanded to put this on your driver, and you don't have to use it, but you at least have to fit it. Like they had to at least try it.
I don't think everyone used it. I don't think Max used it.
Yeah, I know a bunch did and some didn't, but you were at least required to try it, which I thought was a good thing.
Great George. Great.
Yep. You can tell it's this point of the podcast. We've been at this for a little bit of time. All right, a couple more things, and then we'll close the door on this one. We need to talk about predictions. Cody did not have himself a very good weekend. He went for the home run with Max, and Max almost got there, but didn't. You finished, sir, unfortunately, with no points. You and I switched positions. I got blanked last time out. You get blanked this time out. I had a better weekend. At least I scored. I didn't score great, but I finished with 4 points. I got P2 on the podium because that's where Max finished. I got the 2 race times and the fastest quality time, so I get the points for that. And we did not go to time. We went with laps. We had 20 minutes or so to spare. Thank you, Singapore. Recent renovations and changes happening 20 minutes off the time. As long enough as it was, it still felt like a long-ass race because nothing really happened in it. But anyway, I lead this competition by a score of 10-6, but there's still math available for you, sir.
I feel like I'm in Max's position. It's a long shot. It's still possible.
But it's still there. All you got to do is get on a run, man. It can happen. I'm a moron sometimes. I can really predict some stupid stuff. Anyway, we'll see what happens as we go through that. So that'll do it for our Singapore Grand Prix review. Cody, any final thoughts? I mean, we're literally 7 days out from our flight. So I'm excited as hell for that. And we're going to have a good time. We're going to sweat. We're going to have a good time. And we're going to rehydrate. And we're going to figure it out. We're bringing our mega sunblock. I'm bringing like the SPF 250 stuff.
I am super psyched. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to sweat it out and get some Texas barbecue.
Yep.
Ready for the track walk. They still do that, right?
I haven't gotten it confirmed, but yes, they normally do. But they wait until like the last freaking minute to send it to me, like they do every year.
Coda, please let me do the track walk. It is like so fun. And
it's going to be hard for me because I have to get all the way to the other end to find my team this time. That's usually where I never really make it, is up to the far end. And I've never had McLaren be all the way at that end before.
Oh, my team's so good. I got to walk all the way down to the other end of the pit lane.
Yeah, I know. Well, like, you've only had to do it for the last 4 years.
Yeah, this is true.
Pot calling kettle black. But anyway, we will continue to dig at each other probably throughout the entirety of the flight on the way down there. But yeah, we're looking forward to a great weekend. If you're around the Austin area and you happen to be in attendance or something like that, and you're within the sound of my voice, shoot us a DM. Maybe we'll find a way to meet up. We'd love to meet some of the people around who actually take in our show. I was showing somebody the other day where all of the strange places where people have somehow listened to our voice, which is amazing. You guys have been all great all year long, and we are happy to do it. So for Cody, it's been Andy. We will see you in 2 weeks for our Circuit of the Americas preview on site. And then we'll get into all of the good news with that. Until then, take care of yourselves. And as always, may all your laps be fast.